Good morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Compete Week 2025. I've transported now into here. Um, this is our first session of the day, and we've got panels lined up. We've got tactical sessions, but we thought for this morning to kick everything off, we do something a little bit different. And so instead of some polite agreements and nodding heads, we're going to be throwing some spicy statements at two of the sharpest minds in the compete world. We might let them go at it for a little bit here. So think of this as first take, but with a bit more nuance and a whole lot more battle cards and AI strategy talk. So who's going to be part of the debate? We have on my right-hand side, we've got Sharon Maxfield, who runs competitive at 360 Insights.
Good
And below me
morning.
here, we've got Scott Frost leading compete over at Splunk.
Good morning.
They've both been in the trenches. They've been building programs, managing the chaos, and navigating the rise of AI in the day-to-day of CI work. Sharon and Scott, before we get into the debate, we'll break the fourth wall for viewers here. You're both actually in Clue HQ in the office today. I'm going to put you both on the spot first. Say something nice about Vancouver, the city, since you've been here the last few days.
Listen, the food's amazing, and the people are really friendly and nice. I would come here again in a heartbeat. It's been great. We've appreciated Clue's hospitality. I know Sharon and I discussed that too. But I don't know, Sharon, what do you think?
I've been able to get out for some good walks early in the morning, late in the evening, and it's just been great to have a fresh breath of air from Michigan. So seeing mountains, seeing textures, perfect.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like this. Some morning walks, the head's clear. Sharon, I'm excited. Scott, you mentioned to me, he was a little nervous when I was putting him into like his booth there. He's like, Sharon didn't even look at me in the morning here. No, she was just game face on, deadpan, straight ahead. So folks that are watching as well, I'll be monitoring the live chat. We're going to be throwing statements out there, but I want your take too in the chat. When we put these out here, we can challenge Sharon. We can challenge Scott. And if you have additional questions too, pipe them in and I'll throw it on the spot for these two. So are we ready to roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. First things first. Statement number one. The battle card is dead in an age of AI. Agree or disagree? Sharon, I'll start with you.
Disagree. Absolutely disagree. It's evolve or die. So if we're thinking about like static PDF battle cards, old school, sure. Dead in the water. The moment you publish those, they went to die. And that's been the way of the world for years, not even in today's age, but just for years. The moment you published it, it was outdated as a PDF and something happened, something changed. But in the world many of us live in, when we're publishing a board or a battle card in tools like Clue, is it really dead the moment we publish it? No, because we can edit it and we can evolve it. But the reason I say I disagree that the battle card is not dead, it's evolve or die. If we're not consistently iterating, consistently evolving what that looks like, what that means, and considering that the battle card becomes a tool, actually for me, the battle card is an input for my AI model. So the battle card is how I build out prompt libraries. It's how I build out the knowledge base that I want my team members to think about. It's how I consider the personas that are using and consuming the information. So it's not dead, but it has a fast path to die if I'm not consistently iterating and evolving it.
Yeah. So again, we're here to debate, right? I would argue, I would agree with this statement. It is the traditional battle card, like you've already articulated. A static battle card requires a whole lot of effort to keep updated, right? Even if you have the research, you're doing the research, pumping that in and maintaining that library for folks. Most people don't just have one, right? They have multiples that they have to maintain, and that requires a staff to do it. So I agree with you that like the traditional battle card, a static battle card has limited use, except for how are you going to train, to the point you made before? How are you going to train AI? How are you going to give it guardrail documents or instructional documents where it will help understand not just what it can find in the public model and the public internet, but for your specific program, your take, your understanding? There are still people in your organization that are going to need traditional battle cards. There are still people that are AI enabled and understand AI that are going to need traditional static battle cards because they're out in the field and maybe they don't have access. Maybe they're at a site where that's not possible, right? Or the organizational use case doesn't support you using the internet get engaged with the customer. You still need something to read. You still need something to work off of. And I think in that regard, it still is very much valid. But if it's a traditional battle card, it's going the way of the dinosaur, and the people that actually prefer that method, you need to change or you're not going to have a job.
Sharon.
So I think that Scott and I are probably more aligned in this than a debate wants to be, but I'm going to throw a couple of spicy thoughts out here. I think when it comes to that static battle card, you're going to have newer individuals, and let's be honest, we live in an age, and most of us work in an age where our average seller or business development rep, our age ranges are drastic. Like on my team, I've got age ranges of 20 to 40 years difference between an average sales engineer up through my, senior executive account lead, and they want to be fed information differently. They want to consume information differently. And so is there a time and a place for those different artifacts and assets? Absolutely. But there's a way that legacy mindset can become the foundational ground, that it's our knowledge hub, it's our basis of building content out, that then it evolves and grows. I think the part that neither Scott, you or I have talked about is when we think of a traditional battle card versus the world of AI and just looking at public information on the web, what the battle card does that we need to make sure we're still producing, and why I think it's evolve or die, is it brings that lens and perception of what does this information mean for me? And we're bringing that perspective layer through. And so the act of a battle card being static, no, our eyes are always changing. Our perceptions are always growing and evolving. Information is flowing fast. Products are being launched. Competitors are merging. There's acquisitions, mergers, divestitures all the time that's happening. Any of us in the tech space, you're getting a notification on LinkedIn that there's been business transformation that's happened, or reductions in force that's happened, and changes in strategy. So a static battle card is going to die. But when you know the foundation of what that truth means for you, then every new nugget of information that's coming in, you're able to evolve and iterate off of it, so that the perceptions and how this information is used in your day-to-day actions, regardless of your role at the go-to-market organization, you understand how that applies to you, how you can use it in your day-to-day work, and how you can use that for driving revenue.
Yeah, but what you're talking about is the value of the content in the battle card.
Correct.
But we haven't talked about whether the mechanism itself, we've talked about the idea of dynamic versus static, but at the end of the day, what we want this data to live in is a database. It's a place where we can programmatically access it. So, the idea of a battle card, the value of a battle card, we agree 100%. The mechanism, though, does it die? I think eventually it does, because that needs to go into something more accessible, more dynamic. To your point, like, you can publish a battle card and in 10 minutes it's out of date. But if you have a dynamic battle card that's referencing a database and updating itself, and you don't know how you're going to use that information, right? It may be another database, another application, et cetera, that needs the information that you have. So mechanism, I argue that the information all goes into a database, and then the artifact becomes dynamic. Sometimes it's going to be a battle card, sometimes it's going to be a slide deck, sometimes it's going to be an API call. But at the end of the day, the mechanism, I think, is not dead, but on its way out. But the value and the content and what it provides is very much relevant in our today's world. So, I don't know how much we agree or disagree on that, but I think that definitely is where I'm at with it.
Scott, you can't take the Detroit out of me. I live in a world of manufacturing, automotive, we're the gritty city. And in the back of my mind, I'm hearing some of our friends who are sitting out in the lobby talking about, yeah, that's great for the tech space. What about the non-tech space? What if I still need a static battle card? What if I'm still on floors? What if I'm still in physical meetings? And so that's where also we have the responsibility as competitive intelligence practitioners. And notice, I'm not going to, we had dinner last night. We had a debate at dinner. I'm not going to say specialist. I'm not going to say generalist. I'm going to say practitioner, right? And I think part of that comes, it's our obligation to understand who is consuming the content, who is leveraging the content, how do they need to do both, why do they need to do both, and what way is it going to become their tool in their toolbox to achieve the outcomes that they need to achieve.
Yeah, but I want the last word on this, so I'm going to jump in. One more thing, just really quick. Why does the mechanism that we deliver it, the type of artifact we deliver it in, have to be commensurate with the information it represents? It doesn't, right? At the end of the day, I want a database, and I can generate a static battle card for those situations where I need it. I can have a dynamic battle card that's a better outcome for my sellers or for anybody else using it when I need it. And I have a database programmatically for use cases I didn't even anticipate. So I think Where we don't disagree, but we might have some flexibility. Mental flexibility is around, does the mechanism of delivery necessarily have anything to do with the content? And can we create a situation where we can break those apart? I think very well, because we've had lots of conversations, you can. It's a question of do you want to maintain the static, or do you want to maintain a database you can just generate it from when you want to? One's a much bigger architecture, get set up, but easier to maintain over time. The other one is the utility is there. It's already there. It's a physical card. You can hand it to someone. It's just easier. But as practitioners, to use your word, we owe the responsibility to make that reality of choice available to our constituents. We do.
So I got some follow-up questions myself, but also a couple things in the chat that I want to throw into here before we get to our next take here. Was John in the chat mentioned, I think we need to teach sellers that competitive data is dynamic and to expect real-time updates. The old static style of approach promotes laziness and assumption.
Absolutely.
Sharon, I know you mentioned this sort of breadth in age range and maybe even tech savviness amongst your own seller base. How do you navigate sort of this teaching sellers this expectation of dynamic and up-to-date insights now?
So I think it's a fun and challenging way to achieve it. We do frequent conversations and coffee chats. We're a Microsoft Teams organization, so we're pushing content and notifications out. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, it's meeting those people where they are in the places and spaces and tools that they're using to do their day-to-day jobs. If they are showing up in office, then we're showing up in office and having those conversations with them, being there at their workshops, at their training activities. We're going to the trade shows and events with them. We're walking the floor with them and understanding and helping them navigate what does that mean, how do they apply that, how can they pull up the tools and content that they have on the fly to do that. And so we're really spending the time to learn what does that mean for their variety. We've embedded ourselves in our organization to really be that centerpiece of our go-to-market team. So we report through the product organization, but we spend more than 50% of our time with our sellers, business development managers, and solution consultants, because they're the consumers of what we're producing and what we're fueling for them. And so we have to be able to live in both worlds at all times to understand what's the right way to push and pull. But then more importantly, we're always staying in that buyer mindset. If we forget about the buyer mindset, then there's no way we're going to be able to equip, enable, and engage any of our constituents. And that means for my organization, we sell to tech and non-tech. We sell globally. So we have to be aware of all of the different regional nuances as well. And okay, are you a millennial? Are you a Gen Xer? Where are you? What is going on? How do you learn best? How do you consume best? And we just are always having to say, we have options to support you. Here are different ways you can do that. We have to be the ones who are willing to change often and evolve.
All right, Maxfield, let's make it fun though. Where does our responsibility to push people forward from old to new ways start and stop in that paradigm?
Great question. And I think it's going to come up with some of the conversation we'll have later about our role in revenue, right? When we as product marketers and compete practitioners get tied to revenue, then we have an opportunity and an obligation to really kick it a little bit in the butt a bit and say, no, come on. You want to hit those goals, so do we. We've got skin in the game too. And so the more we're tied to revenue and in business outcomes, the more we're able to have skin in the game to make sure our constituents are evolving as well.
Yeah, we'll talk more about skin in the game. I'm looking forward to that part of the conversation. One thing I would say here is, there's this balance between making your customer happy and meeting them where they're at and making them successful. Customer meaning your go-to-market reps or whatever constituent you're talking about. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to push them forward to bigger and better things. They don't always know what bigger and better is or welcome it because they're not educated and they haven't had the time to study it that we have. Having said that, they're still our customer. If we don't provide that to them, someone else will. And so, there's this fine balance of, I know you're not ready for this, but you really need this. And when you find out that you're actually there, you'll really enjoy it. So go ahead.
Scott, will somebody else do it or will they just go try to do it themselves?
Yeah. So with AI, that's a whole new world where there was always a world where people would attempt to do it themselves. But the reality is how convinced are they they're actually doing it well? I love AI, Gen AI, because it never says anything negative. You ever notice that? It never comes back and it's like, no, this is a horrible idea. It's like, well, there are pros and cons to that idea. It's like,
No, I have a name with my chat GPT, and she's definitely mighty sassy to me, and she puts me in my
She's
spot.
inherited some of your Michiganism.
I was gonna
Maybe.
say, we were talking last night that it'd be fun to put like a mode in Ask Clue that's kind of like a sassy New Yorker, right? Mode where like the AI itself is giving you part of the entertainment for your day. But anyway, don't take product decisions or ideas from me. That's a bad idea. Right.
There's one little thing I want to like kind of to tie a bow on this bit is question for both of you. I think the crux of this has been static versus dynamic rather than maybe the battle card itself. What's one concrete change that each of you have made to keep your cards or your source of truth alive this year then?
Ooh, that's tough. I think calling out, so that there's something that AI can't do. So every seller generates a card or runs a query. We want them to do that. We leverage AI for them to do that as well, but curated, right? To make sure that we don't have hallucinations or have problems associated, and to have our particular take, not just AI's take on our product, but our own take on our product. The one thing that I would say though is in all of that effort, it's become clear to me like how misleading AI can be for a seller. So one thing we've done that really is important is call out the differentiation statements. Some of them are about emotions. Some of them are about human nature and the way they tend to behave and the historicals on that, not so much the logical, compare this and then show me a comparison left to right. That's information that AI can never deliver. And that's in our battle cards. And so we made that more important and highlighted that more. So, because if there's nothing else that a rep gets, they're going to get that, which is the most important part, the thing they can't get anywhere else.
So two things that our team has put in practice. One, we've got our product solution battle cards in our living and breathing competitive intelligence space. So the same spot our team members come to get competitive information, they're getting our product enablement information. And with that, we've expanded our constituents for pouring in that content. So we're rotating between our product owners and product managers doing updates in there and having ownership for some of the content. Our sales engineer team is putting in FAQs, common conversations, common, lessons learned and objectives or integration content they're putting in. And then our demand gen team is pouring in case studies and content. So we're making our rounds to our other business units to say, listen, this is a community effort. We're not the only ones who can curate this content. And so when we have more curators pouring in, it's updating more and more frequently and giving those perceptions to the sellers and business development managers often that they have more content. The opposite side then is also true, where we put all of our enablement cards in our same Clue instance as well. So we're able to not only have the solution battle cards and our competitive battle cards, but we have a whole bunch of our how-tos, why-tos, and what-tos from an enablement perspective living in there, which has just helped us with training up our knowledge base so that people are actually using our Ask Clue content as their true go-to for a GPT.
I'm going to pose a question or an idea to the chat too, because John also had another one when we talked about sort of the artifact is he put out there, maybe it just needs to be called something different than a battle card at this point too. And so folks in the chat and maybe Scott and Sharon, if you have any ideas on what we could rename it to, you'd be doing Clue's marketing team a huge favor. So if you got any ideas of another term for battle card, I'm all ears in the chat too.
Sharon, would you like to start?
I mean, we just call them boards. We call them info boards often, not necessarily battle cards. I mean, this was our coffee conversation this morning. We started chatting about that already.
Yeah, we call them compete cards, but we're a large company and we have to think about antitrust. So language like kill, language like, crush, language like markets, those are language that we generally stay away from for legal considerations, but also just the mentality. Right? Like I want people to compete professionally. I want them to compete ethically. I want them to compete very hard. But I don't want them to think that they're trying to destroy another individual on the other side. Like that's not what it's about. Professionalism is you're there to compete and win. But when you see an athlete on the field, they're not there to crush the other person. They're grateful they're there for the opportunity to compete. And we come at it from the same approach. So we like compete card.
I like that. Unfortunately, our SEO team will be like, no, I need to still do battle card for Travi. But I digress. All right, let's get to statement number 2. And Scott, I'm going to kick this one over to you. It is now required that CI pros and PMMs need to be AI experts. Agree or disagree?
Disagree, because there are a couple keywords that required and expert. I don't like those two words in that statement. So everybody in life has choices. You can choose not to adopt and do things the way that you traditionally have done them, but you're not going to excel relative to people that are mastering these new tools, right? So is it required? Depends on what your life goals are. Like, depends on what your program's needs are. If you're a one-man shop and you've got 1,000 things to focus on, would that be thing number one? Me personally, probably, honestly, but would I expect that from most folks? Probably not, right? You're going to focus on basic blocking and tackling, getting information out there, enabling your sellers. Like, you don't have the horsepower to like build the sustainable dynamic system if you don't already have the experience to show up and try and do that. So required, no, right? But extremely valuable and wise, yes, right? Sharon, what do you think?
I would agree that it's a disagree statement, but for me, it's about being AI fluent. I think that it's you don't necessarily need to be an expert, but you need to be fluent. You need to be ever evolving, and you need to be continuously learning. At the end of the day, we are the ones who are responsible for enabling our go-to-market teams, and if we're not able to understand the checks and balances of how we're using AI, be it hallucinations, biases, misnuance, being able to interpret it, then we're not ready. So we owe ourselves the obligation of understanding fluency in AI, governance in AI, how to adapt and apply AI so that we become the human QA of how the AI is working. Doesn't mean we're an expert at how it's doing the sausage making behind the scenes, not necessarily, but if we understand what it's producing and how we can QA check it and what we need to be looking for and mindful of, then we become fluent in our AI day-to-day usage.
I like that language. I think fluency is correct. I think we could probably debate what fluency means. Like in my organization, there's a lot of AI at Cisco and at Splunk, and you do need, like, the average person's fluency needs to be higher maybe than what we traditionally see from our customers, right? Because we're an AI company. But for those that are just leveraging AI for an outcome, they may not need to understand as much, but they need to understand some of the subjects you talked about. They need to understand hallucinations. They need to understand, how you apply your own perspective on top of a public model. And then they need to understand to some extent the automation, because the job is transforming from a job where research was the job to managing research as it happens and then curating it. So two different tasks, related, but two different tasks.
As it relates to folks in your role, like, what does AI on the resume actually mean? Like, what does that look like now when you say I am AI fluent? Like, is there a certificate we hold up? Is there like the soft skills that are non-negotiable? Like, how do we sort of define that?
What does it mean to be AI ready? I think it's like any other thing in your role. I say I'm a CI expert, and you say, okay, tell me about, there's a reason STAR method exists for interviewing, right? Okay, tell me about the situation. Tell me about what your tasks in that, right? Tell me about, it's a standard approach to things. AI is a skill that has a lot of depth and breadth. Where are your skills? What can you produce in terms of outcomes? That's, at the end of the day, on your resume, people want to know, okay, as a result of having this, what can you do for my company? What kind of outcomes can you deliver? So it's a conversation. Well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to build LLM models from the very beginning and I have to train a foundational model and go from there? No, I'm the wrong person for that. But can I take an existing model, augment with a RAG on top of it, and do a really good job of implementing tools that make that available to my sellers and to my other go-to-market professionals and product professionals and execs? Yeah, absolutely, I can do that. So like AI fluency and how much you invest in your team and CI skills versus CI is a function of your organization and what they expect from your team in return.
Yeah, I would step into that and really say that we need to ask ourselves the question, what can we do? What have we done? What are we continuing to do? And where are our goals and desires with it? Whether it is building from this foundation up, building a database to use an AI model, is it understanding prompt engineering and being able to pour into the creative prompt designs that you're using? Is it connecting places and spaces to enhance and enrich what that model looks like, and understanding that, hey, if I take this knowledge base and I connect my CI CRM data, I can enhance it and then add these additional queries on top. So if we take a step back and we understand what are the business problems that we're attempting to solve, then we can say, how are we and how have we applied AI to it? Then our resumes can speak for themselves.
Yeah, it's about what you can say about the work you've done, not about what's on your resume per se, right? The other question I would ask you is, Sharon, when you think about AI fluency, assuming you have a great tool like Clue that has a lot of the, work done around bringing in data sources and sort of setting those prompts up, like if you have a tool like Clue, what is the AI skill set? Just to make sure we give something tangible to folks, what is the AI skill set that people need in your opinion?
Well, I think you have to really consider, what's the data in and the data out and being able to apply discernment there. Is it really just looking at public information and applying it? Or are you building up some of that training and understanding where that modeling goes into play? Are you putting in information about your messaging, your positioning, and how you want to interpret it so that there is a layer and a lens? Are you training to say include versus exclude in order to put prioritization in place for what matters most? Are you looking at primary versus secondary competitors in order to put that weight in those scenarios? I had mentioned before that we have multiple geographies, multiple solutions that we're selling. So are you putting that information in there? I think of it almost like a control board. And are we as practitioners understanding what levers and switches that you can be pushing and pulling and twisting and turning? Like, let's just bring out the bop it if we can for some sound effects at this point. But really, really just thinking about how does that apply? And that's our role, is to understand that at any point, somebody who is using this information, they're going to push it, twist it, turn it, and you need to make sure they're getting what they need in that moment.
And so, I want Clue to stand up an MCP server for me. I want them to build an interface that makes it easy for me to do the weighting that you're talking about to get the right responses. I want to be really good at prompt engineering, right? I want to be really good at getting out of that LLM what I need, and I want my team to be able to do that as well. I want to understand more about where the balance of what I can and can't do with AI. And the reason I like solutions like Clue is because it takes a lot of the technical complexity away, and it lets me focus still on the outcome that I'm trying to drive, right? And it's many of the things that you've said, but the value for me is not that we can't do it. We can, and we have. And in many cases, we're connecting the stuff we built right into Clue. But the point is at the end of the day, we're still competitive, right? We're still competitive intelligence professionals or PMMs who have another job we're trying to achieve. The tool that I choose to use is the one that takes the most work out of it for me so I can get to the task at hand.
One last question before we get to the next piece here. Because you mentioned sort of, and it's going to touch on the first piece of sort of getting because a huge chunk is like your constituent, your end users, the sellers in the field, or other people using the insights that you're curating. Is that where does it start and end for you in terms of also educating your sellers on how to be AI fluent, especially with the tools you're using and how you're collecting this AI insights, the non-deterministic answers they might be accessing? Like, where does the line end for you, almost now enabling the sellers on how to use AI and CI?
I mean, I can answer that question for us. I want my sellers to be as AI fluent as we can. That's like saying you can't do research because I am. No, it's not the way it works. You're going to do your research, I'm going to do mine. What's the difference, right? The difference in my team's research has been curated, validated, and sourced. The other difference is that we have systems in place to actually look at things, and training, right? People, process, technology, and the training to actually aggregate more, look at more, and then training to look at it more rigorously than what you would do if you're a sales rep. Just like you're an expert in, selling the deal, you're an expert in doing the contracting. I'm not, but I am an expert in competitive intelligence. So is my team. So I think I want my sellers to be AI fluent. I want them to have good conversations, say, hey, look, if we change the prompt this way, I get a better outcome. Okay, selling is a team sport, so is competitive intelligence. Let's work together on it. But when it comes to the systems that I use to deliver the outcomes, I need to understand them intimately. I need to understand, to Sharon's point earlier, how to pull the knobs, or push and turn the knobs and pull the levers to make the outcome that I want for my sellers generally exist.
So I would agree with all of that. We've spent a lofty amount of time visiting our constituents in their team meetings and asking questions and understanding how are they using AI to day, how do they desire to use AI, and being able to meet them where they're at, and knowing like, hey, actually, you don't need to build that yourself in ChatGPT. Number one, it's not an approved tool in our organization, but number two, it's not trained up. It doesn't have the backbone. And if you want to be able to be efficient in doing your job, if you pivot this way, here's where the strong foundation, the backbone is, and where we're pouring into building up that knowledge base. Take the same questions that you want to ask ChatGPT, but ask it here and look at the quality of the output that you're getting. And they're leaning in going, oh my goodness, for real? Like we had somebody the other day who messaged and was like, hey, I've got a buyer who has to go to RFP. Do you have the old RFP template? Because I really want us to be the front runner. And I said, we haven't maintained that for a couple of years. But if you go and ask Clue, let's see what we can come up with. And we had built up our Clue knowledge base so much that it came up with 25 specific questions with a competitive advantage for building out an RFP template. And it drafted the email that the seller could send to their customer with, here's the list of questions that you can put in your RFP with the competitive advantage against who we thought the competitors were. Like, they were like, great, this is brilliant. Here's a perfect example of how this makes my life easier.
Yeah, I would say content manipulation is one area where like AI is a fabulous tool because you already have a known set of facts. You're just trying to figure out how to present them correctly or how to contextualize them for a customer or an industry and outcome. Like that's an area where AI shines. It doesn't mean that the value of a PM is not there. Remember, a PM is looking at messaging pillars over time and trying to deliver a perspective on our company. They still need to maintain that concept. They still need to argue and sort of help build out the proper positioning and messaging for the overall effect that they want to deliver to the customer about what we can do. That's still very relevant, even in a place where the content manipulation may not be as big a part of the job.
All right, let's change gears a little bit here. I have my third statement of the day.
All right, Sharon, you ready?
Competitive intelligence practitioners and product marketers will only be taken seriously if they tie directly to revenue. Sharon, agree or disagree?
Agree with one caveat.
Nope, that's not allowed.
One
Nuance?
caveat.
We don't do nuance in this debate.
I'm going to change direct to influence revenue.
Explain.
So behavior matters. Obviously, I work for a company that's all about behavior modification and incentivization. Behavior matters. And what we're building as competitive practitioners and product marketers, it influences not only the end revenue of a new logo sale or renewal and churn, but it also influences all of the go-to-market motion. So if we think of the entire funnel and what we're doing and how what we're producing is consumed and leveraged, it should help the path to producing content. It should help the path to producing an outbound campaign that's going on. It should help inbound as well. It should help with those renewal conversations, roadmap conversations. It should be pouring into so many different areas. So there will be direct revenue impact, but there's also going to be so much more indirect revenue impact that we're going to be influencing, especially the stronger our foundation is consumed across all of the silos or not in our organization.
I mean, it's hard to argue against that. But I would say at the end, the ultimate arbiter, it's revenue. Now to Sharon's point, there's a lot of different ways we influence it. And the halo effect, often starts very early in the company with product inception and how we're thinking about where our product market fit is, et cetera. But like ultimately, if your product doesn't have, if your program doesn't have good KPIs and you can't justify the amount of money you're putting into the program and working versus what you're delivering in terms of influence revenue or ultimately direct revenue, they just won't be able to justify affording your program. That's the reality. So like, do we have an obligation or should we be measured ultimately directly tied by direct revenue? Yes, but you use the word only. Not only. There's a lot of contribution that's made. And, like a cruise ship, a cruise ship captain turns the ship. It still takes 2 miles to actually turn, right? In big organizations, in your small, agile organizations, sure, you can turn fairly quickly. But in big organizations, one of the things that's the biggest challenge is getting your executives to stay with a decision long enough to see the impact of that decision on the sales force, right, and on the numbers. It takes a while for people to get institutionalized, trained up, and actually out there doing what you asked them to do. And then it takes even longer for those deal cycles to all compete so you can see it in the numbers. So things like influenced revenue, things like what have you shipped, things like quality feedback from your sellers on the value of the assets you're producing, or just in general in the program you're running in a dynamic world where it's not content production, but rather maintaining the system. That's the stuff that keeps us going and tells us we're in the right direction to get to direct revenue.
I'm also going to call out to the chat too, because I love this idea. I think it's something that's ever since I've been at Clue and talking to yourselves and other customers, like what are the KPIs that we are accountable to? What are the things that we can like latch onto and hold to? Like, this is the impact we're making. So folks in the chat too, I know there's Zavo, Kim, there's other folks. Let us know as well, like what are the KPIs and where does revenue and some of the revenue metrics that you feel confident that you're accountable to? I'm curious as well, maybe if we tie this as well to this kind of AI piece. I know a big one is like often like seller adoption, consumption. However, in an AI world, maybe the lines get blurred of simple idea of how reps consume. Like Scott, you mentioned off the hop there, like what if you just have an API call plugged in and your data is plugged into, where does the metric for consumption now live? Like, how do we know? What does that look like for both of you?
Yeah, go ahead if you're ready.
I'm good. So for me, consumption is really looking about the engagement and interaction. So we have the Salesforce integration with our Clue instance. We've got our Teams integration. So we're looking at what that engagement adoption looks like. Who are the different audiences? How are they coming in and consuming content? What are they engaging with? Where are they looking for information? But then also looking at the sales stages. In our org, we're using currently a 6-stage sales cycle, and we're transitioning from BANT to MEDPIC in our sales methodology. So understanding where and what we're doing for those life cycles in those stages. Can we prove that we shortened the time frame? Can we prove path to acceleration? Can we prove displacement, and monitoring the competitors that were tracked went from 7 down to final 2 early in those conversations and in those opportunities? And that's showing the quality of our content, the ability to displace sooner and earlier, particularly in those new logo scenarios, and then looking at the ability for influencing renewal and cross-sell in our organization is super high and super effective, looking at win-loss interviews and really looking at the key renewals and how is that pouring in, and can we get testimony out of our win-loss program, which is owned by our team as well, and that's part of our attribution model. So it's really that full cycle and understanding what are all of those different points that either it's a carrot or a stick that you can put in for behavior modification.
Yeah, you can only focus on so much at one time in your company. So, being able to say, okay, I attempted to focus on this sales group with specific messaging or coaching. I attempted over here to like really drive revenue with this takeout campaign, et cetera. You're going to see those numbers show up first because those are the direct actions you're taking and trying to affect. The overall revenue number may take more time. So like there's a lot of different ways to get attribution to revenue. Influenced revenue, I think, is a better number in the idea of like how many deals were you actually able to cover and try to be a part of, right?
Scott, I wanted to just quickly interject because it's like you're reading in real time. A comment from Elizabeth in the chat was asking, like, has anyone developed or launched this sort of segment or of sellers program, like maybe a control group that you're supporting specifically, so you have sort of those control variables?
Yeah.
Is that something you've done? What does that look like for folks that are in attendance and kind of wondering if they should do something similar?
Yeah, we do that all the time. And I think that most good programs do. So I've launched a tool recently. It's an LLM that's focused on solving a very specific problem. And I have a subset of sellers. Why a subset? Well, because they tend to operate in public sector, which is where I really designed the tool for. I want to see first how it adopts there. Then I want to roll it out more broadly so I'm not creating a headache for myself if there's problems or challenges that we need to overcome. And then take that same generalized approach, broaden it more, and give it to the whole field, right? And let them drive. So I think, constituents are different. I have a podcast series. My podcast series is not for the same audience that my direct artifacts and materials for. Why? Because you have early adopters and dedicated adopters they'll consume everything I give them because they're hungry and ready to go. I have others that are like, hey, I'm asked to do a lot of things. It's not my top priority, competitive. It is my job and my team's job to convince them they should look. So my podcast series is an opportunity to say, hey, there's other stuff besides competitive you might be interested in, to teach them that their whole world is actually about competitive and to bring them around and into the fold, right? I call them lean back adopters. They're willing, they're receptive, but you have to show up and pull them to it instead of pushing them, right? They're not going to show up and try to get it. You're going to have to say, hey, there's a reason you should engage here. That's really important to understand. It's the psychology of people, and you not demonizing anyone. This is human nature. The more that you understand human nature and try to meet people where they're at, the more success you're going to have. And that's what it is for me at the end of the day. Can we drive meaningful, objective success in the field that wouldn't exist otherwise? Or with executives, right? Or M&A or whatever we're trying to do.
I think that's super important for categorizing your constituents. So it's easy to do it based on what their job role and job function is or what their jobs to be done are. But it's more important to look at segmenting it even further to who your champions and adopters can be, looking at it of who are your offensive versus defensive players, who needs to be met with empathy versus competency, right? Because there's that angle that you might hear the CRO talking about a numbers goal, and you might see a certain segment or an industry that is on your go-to-market list and go, I can be empathetic to that team. Like, dang, that's a lofty goal. And if you go meet those constituents with empathy and you show them a way to help and equip them or say, I'll partner with you, they're going to go, thank you, right? They're going to say, thank you so much. But then in the opposite, if you meet certain people with competency and you understand like, hey, you're selling, in your example, Scott, to public sector, you need to be on your A game with what you can and can't do, especially in your segment, and understanding like, hey, I've got some tools to help you. Make sure you understand the governance, the rules, the legalities of these solutions and of this options, and I can equip you with the competency that you need. They're going to go, hot damn, and they're going to take that tool and run with it. So being able to categorize, are you playing with an offensive or a defensive stakeholder? Do they need to be met with empathy or do they need to be met with competency? That allows you to put them into a quadrant to say, how can I approach and engage with them in order to make sure that they can use the tools that are available in the most beneficial way for them so that we collectively can.
And Adam, this is a perfect example that ties in the question before about what kind of team set or team skills do you need, AI versus CI? And the answer is it depends upon your program, where I started in the beginning. What is it like? Does your program expect you, or do you have a vision where you're going to create bespoke tools to solve certain problems? Or are you building systems? And so you need to be able to understand systems thinking and you're going to solve it that way. Or are you like truly bespoke and diving into each individual thing? All are different balances. The skill sets are all the same, right? AI, Fluency, CI, and some PM and some other things in there. But ultimately, the balance of those depends upon what you actually expect to be, others expect to be for your program.
We're coming up on time, so I've got a couple lightning round. Also, Angel in the chat mentioned a cool idea as well of just like competitive deal support requests. Number of requests can kind of highlight demand as well in terms of that revenue.
That's one of, we use that actually. Yeah,
that's sure. I think that's an awesome one. Okay, lightning round quickly. I'm going to give one to you, Scott, one to you, Sharon, and then we'll see what we got at the end here. Because Scott, I know there was something that we chatted about you really wanted to share. So, Scott, one unseen opportunity as it relates to AI and competitive intelligence, in your opinion?
All right, I talked about it this week. I'll continue to express it. Look, we're thinking about AI on how to enable our existing jobs to do better. But what about AI to create new opportunities that we don't have today? So the one that I really like right now is I want to train AI personas. I want to train AI personas to represent my customers, to represent my competitors, and then I want them to play out the sales cycle to see who wins and teach me based on a certain mix of competitors, based on a certain product set. Are my arguments actually the arguments that ultimately are the most compelling? Why or why not, right? And use that as a learning lab. So I think there's a really cool opportunity in AI to create new capability that we don't have today to better inform first ourselves, but then our sellers and PMs and our executives about how to compete more effectively. I think it's a great opportunity. It's early in the maturity curve, but man, the person who knocks that out, man, I hope it's Clue, because I could really use that tool.
I love that. I'm going to flip this on Sharon. One bold prediction for competitive intelligence over the next 12 to 18 months.
Oh,
bold prediction. I think that the best CI teams are going to become AI orchestrators in our organization. I think we're going to understand the linchpin and connection of all of the tools and systems and where the data is mingling and where the data should be mingling, because we know where our blind spots are to understand revenue and attribution and understand the push and pull to our CRMs. And I think that we are going to become that linchpin for AI orchestration and governance across revenue engines at our organizations.
Perfect. That was perfect time. And look at this. We finished right on time. Scott, Sharon, this was awesome. Where can people connect with you? Because I know there's going to be a lot of questions and folks that want to follow up after this.
LinkedIn
Yeah, same
for me.
So come and find us. Happy to continue the conversation. I want to say thank you to Sharon for the opportunity this morning. Always enjoy.
I'll meet you in the hallway. We'll carry this
The debate continues. All right. Thank you too. Next up, we're going to have Mara Conrad coming up, and she's going to do a bit more of a tactical presentation and walk through 3 different AI workflows that you can be implementing today, tomorrow, and next week. So thank you both. I'm going to kick it over to our next session shortly.